Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found below. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. It is 6:04 p.m. on June 8th, 2020, and I will now call to order meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. As noted, this meeting is being recorded. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items at this time?
I would just ask that people don't use the chat function because it's might be a violation of the open meeting law. Not really sure, but it probably is.
Thank you. You did remind me of that less than 5 minutes ago.
It's okay.
It is a function that is activated and cannot be deactivated at this point. So, all right. Next item: public hearings / meetings. Public hearing continued from May 11th, 2020. Bundled notice of intent filed by the City of Easthampton, Mass DEP file number 151307. Applicant is seeking an order of conditions for various routine non-exempt maintenance activities. There does not appear to be anyone from the city present at this time for this item. Is there a known request to continue this to what is our next regularly scheduled meeting, Cassie?
That's a good question.
22nd?
Thank you.
June 22nd?
Thank you.
I would say I'm assuming continue, though I have not heard directly from the city, but I know that they are still wanting to pursue it.
Okay.
Motion to continue to June 22nd?
Second.
All those in favor? Roll call vote. Jay Ryan?
Aye.
Jessica Harwood?
Aye.
Julie Busa?
Aye.
Deborah August?
Aye.
Michael Whittemore, please unmute yourself and vote.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda. Public hearing continued from May 11th, 2020. Notice of intent filed by Bucky Sparkle, Mass DEP file number 151308. Applicant is seeking an order of conditions for the installation of a retaining wall at 298 and 300 Loudville Road, map 120, lots 11 and 12, as mitigation for an active enforcement. Good evening, and please reintroduce yourselves for tonight's record.
Yes, hi. My name is Bucky Sparkle. I'm the civil engineer for the project on Loudville Road. And I am back here tonight. Oh, we have Ed Severance here at the bottom of my screen. Maybe it's at the top of yours. He's usually at the top of my list in life, but that's another issue.
Checks in the mail, Bucky. I'm Ed Severance. I'm operations manager for Northeast Environmental Solutions, a division of Taylor Davis Landscape.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're representing the owners of the property and applicants. We were here a little bit ago. You asked for some additional information on this stabilization project, which I provided at the end of May. And basically tonight I intend to roughly roll through that information and answer any questions that you might have. Just going down to my notes here, you asked for a maintenance guide for the living wall, so I did prepare a document and submitted that. And I'm kind of just assuming you have this in your package. If you need the information, we can bring it up on my screen and we could talk about it.
We do have it electronically, but there may be parts of it, it's very detailed, so there may be parts like the site plan or something like that that would benefit.
Sure. Happy to share my screen at any point. I don't know if I can even, yeah, I can't do that yet, but that's all right.
Here, I'll make you a co-host. Sorry about that, Bucky.
No, that's okay.
There you go.
All right. Updated submittal, share, and then there's the plan. So hopefully you're seeing the plan. Is that the case?
Yes.
All right, thanks for the confirmation. All right, so the Living Wall Maintenance Guide, actually, I'm going to jump to a different document. I think it's page 3 of my submittal. So, you know, essentially what we're saying is we don't want any large woody vegetation. No trees can grow on this. Small shrubs are totally fine, but we don't really want things to get very big on this. We do want the occasional, you know, cleaning of trash or debris, anything like that. It is a structure, you know. But considering its location, there really shouldn't be very much that ends up on this. I do not recommend that they dump their leaf cuttings and fall leaf collection over this embankment. I think they should try and do that somewhere else. Basically, keep the wall clean and free of big woody vegetation is the summary of this document. So also we talked about adding another sediment log along the riverbank. So I'm going to jump back to the plan. And I'll make this a little bigger. So this orange dotted line near the river is an additional sediment log that is just going to, you know, provide an extra layer of protection between the resource area and the work zone. Although for the most part, we're just seeding in this larger shaded areas, really just seeding work. We're not disturbing anything, but it's already a little bit disturbed from the landslides. You asked for additional information on the 100-year floodplain, and the site is not mapped by FEMA. So the statement I have is that I made a little note here on note 1, which says, I'll read it. FEMA has not determined the location of the 100-year floodplain for this site. The mean annual high water level is determined by scouring at the river's bank and transition to mature vegetation. The existing steep slope creates a confined floodplain. So that is to say that we have a good idea where the floodplain is, but you know we don't have it isolated within more than a couple of feet. I think for the purposes of this project, though, that's fine. It's at the bottom of the hill, and we're way above it. Not doing any work down there. Information on the dates. Oh yes, you asked. The lots were created in 1979. I sent along the A&R that was signed by the planning board, and the buildings were built about 1980 according to the assessor, so just after the lots were created. So these have been around plenty long per the regulation.
Excellent. Thank you.
No problem. You asked for individual calculations on the riverfront for each lot, because I had combined that information. Really? Is that on page 8? Here we are. So I'm going to kind of highlight these. So we have 298 Loudville has more than an acre of riverfront, 57,000 square feet. About 1,300 square feet is being disturbed. So this is 2.3% of the resource area. And 300 Loudville Road has over half an acre, 26,000 square feet, and we're disturbing 925 square feet, most of which is within 100 feet of the bank, but some of which is 100 to 200 feet away. Total, this is 3.5% of the resource area for that lot. So those have now been isolated.
Great, thank you.
You asked for clarification of the performance standards for all the resource areas, whether or not they were on site. So I went through and appended that to the notice of intent narrative. And I think I generally covered the stuff that was on site with the original. So I can go through that if you would like. But otherwise it has been submitted. And then you asked for greater detail on the riverfront performance standards and alternative analysis, which is where I am already in the report. So I did provide more information. You know, hopefully commission members have had a chance to read through it. And not to say that it is moot, it sure as heck is not. At the same time, considering the circumstance, this work really does need to get done. We are minimizing the area. The alternative would be a much more invasive design, which is what Gill Engineering produced a while ago, or just allowing the bank to continue to erode, which of course is a terrible idea. So this really does seem like one of the better, most environmentally friendly options available at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the list of things that you were looking for. And at this point, I'm happy to talk about any details or answer questions that you have.
I have a question that pertains to the maintenance guide.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, how will it be ensured that the maintenance guide will be kept up and followed in the future? For example, when the property owners change hands, how does that extend to the new owners? And who will inspect and fix any damage? And when would they inspect? These are just, I know this is a basic guide, but those are my questions.
Sure. As far as transferring into the future, probably the best way to handle that is to reference the maintenance guide in the order of conditions, because that does need to be filed with the registry. It'll turn up in the title search. Well, I guess technically not title search, but it turns up when the lawyers do their property review to find out that there is the deed restriction there. And so that's a strong place to reference it. I'd recommend. Of course, the current owners, this is not a development where somebody's going off making a bunch of stuff and selling it and getting out of town. The people doing this work live there and have a vested interest to protect their property, protect their investment, because they're about to spend a lot of money to make sure that they hold on to their yard. So I think the order of conditions is the best mechanism to have continuity into the future. As far as inspections go, I don't think that any inspection would need to be more frequent than annually, and a relatively simple inspection at that. When a retaining wall fails, usually there are some pretty dramatic signs, or if there is strong woody vegetation. If you were to take a look at it once a year, trees, they grow, but in a year they don't get that big. So we'd be able to keep ahead of that if we were out there and did a quick on-the-ground inspection once a year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Bucky, that last comment seems to contradict what you have in point number 2 that calls for quarterly inspections.
You're right. I do call quarterly inspections for, do sure is structurally sound. I guess when I think of maintenance documents in new infrastructure, usually the first year is when you have to go and do, much more regular inspections, show up more regularly. So I think the way I was viewing that would be, what are we doing in the first year? Of course, this is a long-term maintenance. So I'm going to contradict myself here and say that after a year, I don't think anybody needs to check for trees more than once a year. That's really, and I'm happy to make a modification to the document. But the first year, I think somebody ought to go out there and take a look at it occasionally to make sure that it's in place, because failures often occur within the first year. Sorry for the confusion.
Are there any other questions from commission members?
I just have one more. You also stated further down in the plan that if something is damaged, like the filter sacks, they would be replaced. Who does all that? Whose responsibility is that? And is that the homeowners, or are you doing the inspections? I'm just a little confused about that.
So you said the filter socks, so you're talking about the soil erosion control for the project? Is that?
Yeah, you had it in the map further down. It said you would be inspecting for any damage for filter socks, and they would be inspected and replaced.
You say on the map, is that on the plan? Well, if we're talking about the sediment control for the project, the contractor is responsible for maintaining that. And typically when you're dealing with stormwater management, you have to be out there, once a week at a minimum, or after any rain event that has, I think, a ½ inch of rain within a 24-hour period to make sure that, you didn't blow through your soil erosion control. So those are pretty standard methodologies for maintaining construction period erosion control.
And ideally, I would like to put a berm at the bottom that has some growing medium in it as well. So eventually it'll go back to native when the material grows through. That would be a living berm, so to speak, so that the berm would remain there even if the sock was to disappear. You'd still have a filter. Although once the vegetation is established, there should be no runoff at all, but just natural runoff.
And Ed, when you say berm, are you talking about, the sock along the river?
Yeah, we would keep the sock along the river being a filter sock throughout construction, but once it begins to establish, I would like to put, or once we get it finished, I'd like to put a compost sock below that would be seeded so that it could go back to nature eventually.
That sounds good to me.
We've done that before. It's been common practice. And I'd be happy to send a quarterly report the first year to the board and to the commission, and annual reports for 3 years after, if you'd like, with pictures. That would make you feel better about someone overseeing it.
I think that's consistent with what we would require of projects with any sort of long-term vegetative stabilization of a resource area.
Happy to do so.
Thank you. So,
Going back
for clarification, can you just hover over the site plan where that long-term mulch tube would be? Just right at the bottom?
Yeah, as I understand Ed's plan, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, is along this same dotted orange line, just above the bank's edge of the river.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
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 Going back to
thank you, Julie.
So we need to know the percentage of riverfront that was already disturbed on the number 300, I think, to build the previous wall, don't we?
So I'm going to interject here. Cassie, were you able to check files, or Ed, were you able to find the previous documentation? There's reason to, the previous chair suggested that it may have been done as an emergency certification.
Right. I don't have. I thought I did. I looked back. I don't have an NOI or anything on record. So it's been 15 years now. So I'm uncertain exactly why. But we never did file an NOI that I can tell.
Cassie, did you have a chance to check the commission's paper files?
I did, and I wasn't able to find anything regarding this either as an emergency cert or a certification or as a notice of intent. Also went back to the minutes and wasn't able to find them in the minutes either, though admittedly those might be more incomplete than they are complete. I don't think that it didn't happen. That something might have happened in that amount of time to the physical file, unfortunately.
So, Julie, and everyone, I spoke with the
I would have thought I would have had a determination of applicability.
Well, there are a few things. The commission's files weren't always as secure, and there may have been an inadvertent effort to make more space that resulted in the loss of the file. Earlier versions of the commission did not always adhere to the regulatory and administrative processes with the best of intentions, though. And so depending on the circumstances, there may not have been extensive documentation of what transpired. I don't believe the DEP notice of intent lookup function online has anything for this location either. So that,
I believe that was prior to the online version.
and I think they tried to update the database. So even though there's no data, you'd see back to,
Well,
Can I say, while we've been talking about the history of 300 Loudville Net Wall, I just ran a quick calculation. The existing living wall is about 400 square feet. So if you assume, maybe they disturbed twice that area for the installation, of course it would have been temporary, and has about 26,000 square feet of riverfront on that lot. So it was about 3%, being pretty conservative in terms of that project.
okay.
And so it's not, obviously it was done. It's not disturbed in its current state. But in terms of numbers, you're looking at a 400 square foot structure right now.
Okay. So Julie, it seems like we would be well within the 10% per lot, even
Yeah.
if that were factored in, and the houses and the yards predate riverfront area.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Jay, Michael?
I think I'm good.
Michael, do you have any other comments? Cassie, did we lose Michael?
You're just muted, Michael. I don't know if I can unmute you if you'd like. I don't know if you can do it yourself.
I'm good. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Nope.
No question.
Thank you, Michael. All right. So with that, do we have is there, so I'm assuming no further discussion. All right, being no further discussion.
Do we discuss conditions that we would?
Yes, we'd like to move on to discussing potential draft conditions. Cassie, do you have anything drafted for this?
Yeah, I started to have a draft originally. I can share that if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to stop your sharing, Bucky, if that's all right.
Yeah, stop me.
Okay.
So just for Bucky and Ed's benefit, the commission worked from a pretty standard template. It was originally, I think, developed by MACC, and we, modified it over a few years to be a very robust order, more to protect the interests of the act than anything. So it's usually a few pages.
Okay, let's see. So I'm going to, I know there's usually attachment A and attachment B, and A describes the project, where B is special condition, the general and special conditions. I'm just going to do attachment B for now. I think that A needs to be updated based on what has been discussed.
Right. A is really less for discussion and more for benefit of anyone such as myself looking back in time and trying to figure out what the project really entailed.
Right. So then I have it here, and I think, so again, like you said, Melissa, this is, usually pretty standard across a number of across the orders. I'm trying to see if I have highlighted some questions. I know probably a big one is usually the pre-construction meeting requirements. So I can maybe jump around as you guys discuss.
One thing I want to mention before I forget, because we've all seen that I forget quickly, just so somebody else might remember, is relative to the long-term O&M. I would like to include that both as as a document listed in attachment A, but also actually make it attachment C, so that it's as presented to the commission, it's attached, and we're not reiterating it in a separate format.
That sounds good.
Would you also allow me to update number 2 and indicate that quarterly inspections for the first year, or is it just part and annual inspections afterward? If you're going to make that document an attachment.
I have no problem with that. How do other members feel?
That sounds appropriate.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Bucky.
I can probably get that revision to you before the end of the meeting once I'm done interfacing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so pre-construction meeting, but the erosion and sedimentation controls are expected to be installed so that the commission or its representative can confirm that they are as they were expected to be.
Yeah. Do you want me to go through all the ones that I just have highlighted? Because those are the questions that, okay. So I'll start with, again, most of these are pretty much just boilerplate. The first one that I had a question about was asking for a typical for the straw bottle. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to this, or if that was enough, or if it was necessary at all.
Bucky, do you have a typical detail for the straw bottle on the site plan?
It's not actually a straw bottle, it's a compost filter sock.
Okay.
It's not, there's a difference.
So you would update straw bottle, Cassie, with strike all straw bottle references and replace them with compost filter socks?
Thank you. And if you'd like, we do have a jute sock that we could use at the bottom of the hill, which would decompose over several years, like 2 or 3 years, and all you'd be left with is a natural vegetated berm. That way you don't have the sock on will last about 20 years before it starts to break down, but I could use something that breaks down more quickly to return to natural state.
I think that would be my preference, given the location along the river itself.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I can make a note about that in the order as well. The next one, and this is more just a note that I wanted to add, which is how I've been operating, but I think it became clear that that might not be explicitly clear to the applicants, is that the building permit, I have been operating where I don't issue the building permit until all the pre-construction conditions have been met. And so for some people that can affect their planning of when they start building. Normally people kind of start building right after, but there is some people, they think that, I don't know, it just has been a problem before with other projects, other places. So that was just a note I wanted to add and make sure that was okay with everyone else, that I added that to there.
Does this project have a building permit per se?
They go through the building department and I have to sign off on them, or I don't know. Sometimes maybe they don't, but all the ones, like all the major projects that I've done so far happen to also go through the building department. So maybe I'm just.
Usually there's a building being built though. I don't know if this would actually have building department jurisdiction.
Yeah, we've never dealt with the building department in the past.
If it's all underground, you don't need to get a building permit.
Okay, that makes sense then. Then this is more applicable to future projects then, I'd say. Then maybe I'll just add if there is one.
I think that's fine. I think it's good language to have in there because it does clarify the commission's position relative to that process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So this, going on to during construction. So this one goes back to when we were talking about the stockpiling. It seems like it's not going to be possible to stockpile outside of the riverfront area. So how should I, for condition 26, unless it is possible, but I feel like at the last meeting we had determined that it wasn't.
It would be pretty difficult, I think, considering that the yard is almost all, even the front of the property is within the riverfront. Like, you'd have to haul it off site. It's all a disturbed, grass area that we'd be stockpiling in. So, it's not exactly a refuge for the areas that we would be putting earth.
So maybe we could modify this one because obviously the work is well above floodplain, and I think we all acknowledge that they really, short of piling it all the way up by the road, if that would even be out of riverfront area, it's just not realistic. There is a cleared, maintained lawn area, so maybe we should say that, temporary stockpiles are limited, shall be limited to the footprint of maintained lawn area. No permit. I'm sorry?
That seems reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, and more like no permanent stockpiles shall remain on site following the completion of construction. So in the event that there's a pile left over, it gets managed. It's not just left off the slope. Not that I would expect that to happen here, but
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. I can edit it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, part of our contract with the homeowner is to restore the lawn to its original, condition. So.
Okay, cool. So the next one then, this is regards to reporting that we typically, or all the projects that I've worked on so far, I've had a requirement for reporting. And it kind of goes with a couple of things about this. There's another condition later that says, so this one is saying that you have to have, assign a person to be the project environmental monitor who's going to come and do the inspection reports. But I don't know if I already took it out. There's another place in a lot of the other conditions that I've seen where it asks for a monitor again. And so it kind of has two places where it asks for someone to be monitoring. Yeah, here we go. So condition 15 and condition, let's see, 29, I think. 29. I wonder if it's, maybe I'm not understanding, but it seems like potentially a redundancy. This one, it says it has to be like a professional engineer or a registered land surveyor. And the other one just says it could be somebody who's qualified can be the environmental monitor. So I didn't know if maybe we should remove this second one or combine it with the condition 15.
Can you scroll back up to condition 15, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one of the differences is that one of these is something that has to be set up pre-construction and the other is ongoing during construction.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not two different people. It can be the same.
It can be the same person, and I think perhaps what we need to do in condition 29 is tweak the phrasing so that it refers to the project environmental monitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that would eliminate that confusion.
Okay, cool. And then I believe in this one, in condition 15, it calls for a weekly progress/monitoring report. And then do we feel like that is still appropriate?
Well, it explains the expectations for that role, and then I think condition 29, if you can get, when you get there. I think it just reiterates it as a construction period requirement.
Okay.
So my preference, though there is some overlap, my preference would be to clarify that this role is served by the approved project environmental monitor and leave the rest as is.
Gotcha.
Agreed.
Okay, cool. All right, and then the next one. Oh, so this one, I think that it has, for after hours and weekends, the phone contact. Is that supposed to be my cell phone, or is it supposed to be, like, what have you guys done in the past?
I think that was the previous agent's cell phone number.
Okay, well, obviously, if you want me to, I'll change it to mine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't some kind of, like, other hotline phone that we had somewhere.
No.
Okay, cool.
No.
The environmental hotline, the red phone.
Green phone.
Yeah, green phone. All right, cool. Is there anything else? So this will have to be updated based off of what we talked about today. Oh, so for stormwater, let's see.
Stormwater is not applicable.
Yeah, cool. So should I just take it out or just make it up as applicable?
I think we can, in attachment A, we can state that stormwater is not applicable and why, and then just take these out.
Okay.
How does everyone else feel?
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That makes sense.
For training purposes, stormwater is not applicable because,
There are exemptions for a couple of categories, including single-family residential properties.
okay, thank
But
you.
if you're a subdivision of more than 4 lots, you're in. The whole subdivision's in.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Then we've got water quality and post-construction. Let's see. And then in perpetuity. And I guess my question, just generally for in perpetuity, would that have anything to do with the land management, the maintenance plan?
Yep.
Would I add language here?
Yeah, I think what you do is you would add maybe at the end or at the beginning, you could add a condition that refers to the long-term operation and maintenance plan that is provided in attachment C.
Okay.
And that way, you know, the question when we get to a certificate of compliance is always, you know, flipping through quickly during the hearing and just figuring out which ones are the long-term O&M related requirements, and that's why we've organized it this way.
Gotcha.
So
I know this is my first order of conditions with this commission, so I don't know if we need more time probably to read the rest of these. I'll make those changes, and then do I send them on to all of you again and the applicant, or how does this?
I think if you make the changes as we've discussed them, everything else is very standard, so I don't feel this needs further discussion. And if the rest of the board is comfortable, I'd be comfortable entertaining a motion to close the hearing.
Melissa, one question. Given that the maintenance plan calls for not depositing debris, do we have leeway under the improvement over existing conditions in Riverfront to ask that the debris that's currently piled against the existing wall be removed and that be seated as part of this?
That would be 1058.5 and not 1058.4, right?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know either.
I mean, it seems reasonable that because that is a recommendation of the long-term O&M plan, that be a requirement. I'm looking for Bucky and Ed to chime in here.
Yeah, I was just going through the performance standards in terms of which section, first of all. But we're still talking, this is Riverfront, right? This is the concern. This is. Well,
I'm a little unclear what you're asking us to do, thank you.
it sounds like they're looking for the existing vegetative debris pile that is now at the base and up against the face of the existing living wall, for that to be removed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Or is it the debris that's on the top at 300?
I was referring to the pictures that we saw last time of the debris piled at the bottom, but I don't recall there being debris at the top as well, so I'm not certain what you're referring to, Jay.
I thought there was like yard waste that was dumped on the property that's at 300.
Yeah, that's at the base of the wall, which I guess is still relatively near the top of the slope, but it's at the base of the wall and it's piled up and has buried the bottom portion of the existing wall. So that's what we're talking about. Just to check in. I guess my perspective is that that vegetation isn't helping the situation. I personally would be interested in seeing the actual vegetation growing there, because those provide a root system. And if it's just a pile of dead debris, there's no sunlight getting there, there are no plants living there. It's now just dark and moist. Dark and moist tends to degrade things. So it is probably to the benefit of that structure for it to be cleared out and seeded with a mix similar to whatever Ed's using for the other wall.
Right.
Now he's putting that in the sock, so it would have to be applied to the surface. But
We can terracite, seed the surface, but the trees down below, I think, are important for animal habitat to rebuild what's down there. I don't think they're in the way of, they're actually helping with a little bit of erosion control, but it's also good animal habitat down there as well. Seeing as everything else got swept away, it would give them some cover.
Downslope. Yeah, the downslope debris, that generally, we're going to leave that in place except for getting some of the loose stuff that is over eroded soil that's part of the landslide, so you can terrace seed that. But yeah, any of the big woody stuff that's down, I think that really should be left there. You'd make more of a mess trying to get it out of there than.
Yeah. So I think we'd be happy to clean off the original wall and reseed it while we're there. That's not a problem. I just have to get Mr. Russ to agree not to keep dumping down the slope.
Well, have him talk to me, and I'll convince him that it's definitely in the interest to his investment. There's lots of slope he could dump down. Really. I mean, maybe I don't get to say that at the commission. I don't know.
Many resource areas is not to be encouraged.
The leaves are going somewhere in that neighborhood.
Where would the language, should we put language in the order conditions asking for that removal, or would that be part of something else?
It could be under construction.
Okay. Okay, cool. Are there any other special conditions that you'd want me to add based off of the conversation today or the last meeting? It looks like the plan has been updated with all the NOI submission has been updated with all the requests that were made.
No, I don't have any other requirements at this time. Others?
It's Mike. What was the final decision on debris? Are we requesting it be removed?
Just the leafy debris that's located on the existing wall. It's near the top of the slope, but it's at the bottom of the existing wall. Not the woody. There's a lot of large logs that fell during the kind of landslide that occurred. Those are going to remain in place for the most part.
Commission's okay with that?
Yeah, downed woody debris is actually good wildlife habitat.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And Bucky or Ed, do you have any questions about what might be within these order of conditions or any concerns?
No, I mean, obviously I haven't read all of these conditions. I am roughly familiar with the quote unquote boilerplate that ends up being attached to all orders of conditions. And I'm more interested in the ones that are, specific to this project. I think we've talked about them and they're clear. And as soon as, we wrap up this call, I'm going to modify the operating maintenance document so that the commission has the final version before the close of the meeting.
Great.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, with that, are there any further comments from commission members regarding the draft order of conditions?
Not for me.
Okay. Being none, would anyone care to make a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions as discussed?
Motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions as discussed.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Jay Ryan,
Aye.
Julie Busa,
Aye.
Deborah August,
Aye.
Jessica Harwood,
Aye.
Michael Whittemore.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much for your detailed information. Cassie, what are we looking at for schedule to actually get the paperwork out the door?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, because I believe it was the last meeting, everyone agreed to let me do electronic signatures. We have that record. So I'll be signing for you all on the order of conditions. I'm going to finish up, create the final draft for them, and then try to send it out. I mean, of course, by the end of the week, I'll send it off to Bucky and Ed, and then DEP, and everyone else.
Great. And Ed and Bucky, I don't know if you've run into this recently, but registries of deeds are still recording by mail. I don't know when buildings are going to reopen for recording in person. And then there's always e-recording. Not that I'm familiar with that option, but.
Something new to try.
Yeah. Let me know if it gives you any trouble. I'm curious. I don't know. I don't know of anyone trying to work with the registry of deeds in our county yet. I think they are like operating again. Okay. And then the only other note is that DEP, their appeal period is extended because normally, they have 10 days to appeal. They didn't have any comments for this project, so I would be surprised if they were to appeal. But just know you might be, even if you wait the 10 days, you might still be operating at your own risk or carrying on at your own risk. However, you can request a letter from DEP for them to say specifically, we're not going to appeal. Instead, if you want to do that as like an extra assurance. And I have some more information about that if you want to do that I can send to you.
Yeah, Cassie, if you could, we would like to move this forward.
Yeah, no problem. I'll make a note.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, great. Yeah, so my goal is to get that, the final draft of the order of conditions sent to you by the end of the week and put that out, and then I'll send all the DEP appeal stuff with it as well.
All right.
With that, we're all set here. Hearing's closed. Project's approved.
All right, cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much. Have a good evening, and we will continue with our agenda.
All right, it's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, Bucky.
Guys.
Thank you.
Sorry if everyone just heard me pour water.
You guys want some candy?
Oh,
Yes.
dang it.
No.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to enforcement actions?
Let's do it.
Okay. CFM Properties LLC, complete automotive repair, 10 O'Neill Street.
Yeah, I called them again today and left another message, didn't get a response. I'm thinking I might have to just send out another email, another physical letter. I don't have an email for them. I haven't gotten one yet. So
Okay.
that's my plan, if that makes sense to you guys.
Sure.
Cool.
Cernak, Westview Terrace.
Hold on, I'm trying to pull up my project update list here. As far as I know, no updates. They've been, the last update I made note that they've been carrying on with the invasive work. The weather's nice again.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Kaufman, 298 Loudville Road, see public hearing, item 3B.
Should that remain on the agenda until they get a
Yeah.
certificate of compliance?
I'm fine with that. Others?
No, that's fine.
I mean, obviously they have every reason in the world to see this project through.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
St. Bridget's Cemetery?
Yep, I spoke with Tony Summers from the consulting firm today, and he said he's going to be checking in with the monitors that they have set up, what their plan is for their reporting. So I'm hoping I'll hear back from him within the week.
Okay. All right. Bernard Gall, 37 South Street.
No update.
Nothing. Okay. Next item, open space updates, Echodale West Orchard area improvements.
No updates.
Lathrop Community, Florence Road Conservation Land discussion.
Right. So this is about their trails. They decided that they are going to go ahead and file an RDA.
Okay.
Hopefully, I don't know when to get out. They plan to send that submittal, but hopefully sooner rather than later.
Okay. I guess this is two things. So one, they intend to file, that's good to know that they intend to file something with the commission for trail improvements. Mm-hmm. I thought this originally pertained to their, the conservation restriction that was required as part of their planning board approval.
Oh, I see.
And it might have been a conversation that started long before your tenure began, Cassie. So I think it might be worth following up with Jeff Bagg. Their original conservation restriction was never fully executed. I'm paraphrasing and going off memory here. Mm-hmm. They came forward to discuss modifying it so that it previously it basically was set as the flagged wetland boundaries, mm-hmm. which would be a meets and bounds nightmare to prepare for a conservation restriction. And so I think they were looking to simplify it, and it would essentially kind of include some of the upland buffer, squaring or rounding things off, as opposed to following every little nuance of the delineated wetland boundary. And I think big picture, long term, the question that I always had was, you know, I thought there was some requirement that your open space set aside under your CR couldn't just be the undevelopable portions of your property that you were required to, you know, a percentage of it could be, but that it couldn't just be wetlands, floodplain, streams that you wouldn't be allowed to develop and build in anyway, that it had to, you know, actually include an upland portion, potentially developable portions, but there's actually a trade-off there.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll ask Jeff about that. And I don't know also how this relates to their compliance update, like open permit that they also have, because that was the thing that's going to expire this coming July. And I can talk about more when we get there to that part of the agenda, but I just didn't know. Does that conservation restriction tie into that as well?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay, gotcha.
Conservation restriction is long overdue, if it can be such a thing. It was from the original site plan approval.
I see.
From the planning board. So. Okay. All right. Are we going to jump into compliance updates? Okay. Pleasant Street Mills, EP file number 151273.
No updates.
Lathrop Community, 100 Bassett Brook Drive, 151283 for invasive plant management.
So as I said, this is expiring July 13th of this year, which is coming up. As the state of emergency, DEP has issued guidance that all expiration dates are told for the experience, or for the duration of the state of emergency, which means that they're basically on pause. But if the state of emergency ends, they'll expire, and anything else that expired during it expires. So it's kind of like on that day, could potentially be wild. So yeah, go ahead.
So in the spirit of cooperation here, and the potential challenges that the ending of the state of emergency could pose relative to the temporary stay on expiration dates. The regulations under normal circumstances require that a request for an extension be submitted at least 30 days prior to date of expiration. So in this case, that'd be June 13th. Do you have a contact person? And, this might be above and beyond, but these are unusual times. Do you have a contact person you could reach out to at Lathrop to say if they were inclined to request an extension, they need to do so post haste?
Yeah, they already have reached out to me. They're on top of it. So they sent me.
Okay.
And I sent them this information and said, like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this started. So
they're going to request an extension for this order?
Yes.
Okay. So that has to be in your hands within the next few days, basically?
Yeah. And if they, yeah, essentially. And I told them, so I guess my question is, what happens if they don't get all the submittal materials by the 13th? Are we saying like it's too late?
I think as long as they make their intentions clear, I don't think I'd be worried about sweating the details. But I do think it might be worth a follow-up conversation with Mark Stinson at DEP just to clarify what DEP's expectations are, since, they're basically saying nothing expires until the end of the emergency order. But as soon as that happens, everything that was going to expire expires.
Right.
So what does that mean if someone's trying to request something with a regulatory time frame in that period? Is it 30 days prior to the expiration of the emergency order, or is it 30 days prior to the expiration of the order of conditions?
Right. And I don't think that we'll know 30 days prior to the end of the state of emergency.
And then there's that.
Yeah. So
I'd be, for myself, I'd be very conservative and assume probably worst case scenario, which is 30 days prior to the date of the existing order.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to Mark Stinson about it, and I've already, preliminarily responded to Lathrop and told them that they need to, just all the things that they're going to need to do it, the form and everything. So they're on the path to doing it. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Williston Northampton School, Taft Ave, 151286.
No updates.
Easthampton Nashwauk Pond, 151288, Aquatic Veg Management.
No updates.
Loven Properties off O'Neill Street, 151287.
No updates. I haven't received any reports either. So I reached out to Mark Reed just today, and I'm gonna see. I haven't heard from him in a while. So I don't think that any work probably has been going on, but yeah, I need to hear from him.
Okay. If you go into the original application materials and there is an email address for Mr. Loven, it might be good to include him on that correspondence.
Okay.
There may or may not be a contract for Mark to provide those services, and if that's the case, I don't want to put him in a position to answer to something that he's not responsible for.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Easthampton, Whitebrook, Broadbrook, DEP file number 151268.
No updates.
One Industrial Lofts LLC, 1 Ferry Street, tracks 1 and 2, DEP file numbers 151298 and 299.
They've been sending their reports as needed, and so far so good.
Okay. Next item, Easthampton Park Solar One LLC, 232 Park Street, DEP file number 151293.
Okay, so there's two items still outstanding. So the first one is they are requesting an amended order of conditions for the wetland replication area because they want to have a lot of proposed changes to the replication area. The first step, in my understanding in this process, is for you guys to decide if it does warrant processing as an amended order of conditions or if we should ask for a new NOI. And so in the document that I can share this with you guys now too if you'd like, but there's MACC guidance on how you determine that. And there's also DEP guidance as well on how you process a request for an amended order of conditions, because there isn't a form or anything that they have to submit with DEP. So this is the first step. And for a new NOI, of course, that has a lot more requirements as opposed to an amended order of conditions, which they will have to resubmit a number of things, but they won't have to do as much as they would for an NOI. And basically, the way I understand it is that the difference between the two is that if you think it will result in increased disturbance, then that would warrant a new NOI. If you think that the disturbance will be comparable, that the amount of disturbance will be the same, then it makes more sense to do an amended order of conditions. And it just kind of lists here, like the purpose of the project has changed, the scope of the project has increased, the project has revised, the project as revised meets relevant performance standards, and the potential for adverse impacts to protected statutory interests will be increased. So if it's yes to any of those points I just said, then you should do a new NOI.
Okay. And have they actually provided this information yet or no?
So what they've submitted so far was just the plan, and I can share it with my screen now if you guys didn't get a chance to look at it from the document. And basically, they also gave me a description of what they want to do. They have not done a full submittal yet, just because that depends on what we ask them to do. If we ask them to do a new NOI, that's going to be a different amount of processes and things as compared to an order of conditions. So, though all the information that they'll have to supply is the same, obviously, but this is what they gave me so far, was just kind of more of a map and a description, not how it meets all the performance standards or not yet.
Was this in the information that you sent to us? Is this on the...
In the project update thing that I sent today, if you scroll all the way down, there's a link to the replication area. It's like I said, that part is highlighted, and then within there, it has all the information they sent me so far.
I don't think I got that.
The project update?
Yeah.
You did. It came through at 3:10.
I know, it was close. I apologize that it was so delayed.
I clicked on the link in the PDF and it says 403 forbidden.
No. Okay, hold on. I'll pull it up then and share my screen.
Okay.
The 403. Uh-oh.
Oh, there it is.
Hold on just a second. Okay, I'm opening them now. All right, let me share my screen.
I was able to open it. It did open.
Okay.
Okay, it didn't like me.
Yeah, okay.
I believe you, Jay.
Well, there's 3 drawings.
Might be an ID10T error.
So the main thing, I think the best thing is this description that they sent. And they're obviously claiming that it will not increase the amount of disturbance in jurisdictional areas. And let me know when you want me to show you the, go over to the maps if anybody wants to see those.
If I'm not mistaken, Stephen Herzog worked on the original filing and presented to the commission. Does that ring a bell with anyone? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the question I have now is why did it seem like a good idea, a sustainable idea at the time, that now is not?
All I know to that effect is that the current contractors originally proposed the change, and their reasoning was that the topography was not, it was like harder. I don't know if harder is the right word, but it was going to be a lot more difficult to create the wetland replication area there. Primarily, it seemed to me because of the topography, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. We are seeking this change because the location near White Brook will be very difficult to construct and to stabilize, and will lead to increased risk of erosion into White Brook and its bordering vegetarian wetland.
Okay. Is everyone ready for us to move on to the next, to an image or additional information?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. So first I'll start with 101, which I think is the overview of it in its entirety, if it'll load.
So based on what you know, at this view, can you either zoom in so we can still see the whole extent, or hover over where it's proposed currently?
Yeah, so my understanding is this is where it's proposed currently, and this is the new one, but let me zoom in.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, I zoomed. I really zoomed in. Okay.
Okay. So why don't you kind of pan around until you can show us where the original location was, because my recollection was it was downstream of the first crossing and to the west of the WB 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 line. But
Right.
is that
Hold on just a second.
okay?
So let's see. This is the first crossing right here. Oh,
Mhm.
Lord. It's reloading. Yeah, so this is the first crossing right here.
Mhm.
And then, let's see. So I think that this area is where they want to do the new wetland replication area. And the original one was by crossing 1. But the new one now is by crossing 2. And
There's different water.
yeah, and I highlighted that in my original communications with them, that it may be in violation of one of the performance standards. And like I said, they haven't sent anything that speaks to each of the questions that I had. That was a compilation of what you all had asked for. And so we definitely still have some information still outstanding. Just gonna see if this gives a little.
Melissa, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Did what they provided in terms of documentation step through the performance standards for BVW?
Originally, or this one?
This one.
Yeah, this one, no. All I received was these three items, and then these 3 maps, and then this description of their request.
So I would think in order for the commission to evaluate this, and to substantiate their assertion that that it, meets the performance standards, they would have to run through 310 CMR 1055 for B, 1 through 7.
Right. Yeah. I sent them so I guess, let me go over here. I sent them a whole list of all it was a combination of the performance standards as well as the additional questions that you guys had. And so I can tell them that they need to give us that information, speak to all those before you guys can make a decision.
Yeah, and really, particularly, the replacement area shall have an unrestricted hydraulic connection to the same water body or waterway associated with the lost area. And the replacement area shall be located within the same general area of the water body or reach of the waterway as the lost area. So I don't think the information that you're sharing with us right now meets those, demonstrates those compliance with those requirements.
All right, cool. So basically what I'm going to say to them is, based off the information they gave us, it sounds like it would need to be a new NOI. We can't make a determination really right now, but it's definitely not meeting at least that requirement. And so they're going to need to speak to all those things that I originally asked for before we can make a determination.
Yes.
Okay,
but it's not even a matter of why or not. It's just, it doesn't meet the performance standards.
Right. Right.
In general, as a rule, I think, I try to maintain the consistency in how the commission requests information. And, I feel that the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate. And one of the ways that I am comfortable with demonstrating compliance with performance standards is literally stepping through point by point. And, here's the requirement, here's how we meet it.
Right.
And they haven't done that. And I think that's what I would want to see at a minimum before moving forward with further discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely send that to them then, give them an update.
Okay. Any further discussion before we move on to the next agenda item?
Nope.
Great. Where am I? River Valley. Yes, River Valley Co-op Market, 228 Northampton Street, 151301.
Yes, so that they have an update in that there's a Mass DOT road widening or some kind of construction project happening right along the road near their project on Northampton Street. But so as a result of that, they had to, there's a silt fence in addition to a straw wattle going along that area, and they needed to move the silt fence, and they still have the straw wattle there, but they just have the silt fence now along Northampton Street during that construction period, and they'll be kind of just flexibly working around all that construction, I guess. Because I think it's the road is widening into their property potentially.
I'm sorry, did Mass DOT submit any information to the commission?
I wasn't sure if that was like a past thing that you guys had. That was
this wasn't part of the design that was approved for River Valley, was it?
I think the road realignment was in there, wasn't it? I know we heard about, I can't remember if it was in the official documentation or if it was just a side note that they told us was happening. But I know that we've talked about this. I think it's a tip project that's part of making the site sufficiently accessible for traffic.
Or like a turning lane was being created, like that.
They're related. But I don't remember exactly if it was in the, I think that it was shown on the plans.
Okay. So provided there's no increase in impervious area, right? So, all right. Cassie, do you have those plans electronically?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Maybe not this very instant. We can keep moving, but just if we could double check that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Great. So next item, City of Easthampton, 151302 Pump House demo at Lower Mill Pond.
No updates.
Okay, City of Easthampton, 151303 roadway improvements and maintenance of Ferry and Pleasant and Lovefield Streets.
Yep, they submitted their first inspection report, and it looked good.
Okay.
And there's still just a few documents I'm trying to get for them, but otherwise it's all good.
Okay. Beacon Solar LLC, 151304 50 Florence Road.
Yes, I got a letter at the office dated for May 22nd from Bernie Gall, and it was the letter was addressed to, I think, the chair of the planning board, and it was also sent to, I guess, a bunch of other departments that they are planning to designate part of the lot to a solar classification. I have the letter if you guys want me to pull it up now.
Sure. I don't know how that pertains to the commission's jurisdiction.
I don't think it does either, but it was just it was just an update, something I received about it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Okay.
What do you see in your crystal ball, Michael?
I see bad things.
No.
I see COVID going away and protests going away. I see good things happening.
Oh, good. All right. Do you want me to, I have the letter. Do you want me to pull it on the screen?
Sure. Let's just do that quickly.
Sorry, my computer is so slow. It sounds like a jet engine is trying to take off on it right now because it's just like ancient.
Notice of intent to convert to other uses and remove. Oh, so this.
They're pulling it out of 61B.
Yeah, so doesn't that give the city right of first refusal?
I don't know. I don't know what that means. I've heard of that, but I don't know what it means in this instance.
So again, I think this is something to talk to Jeff Bagg about.
Okay.
That sounds familiar. If he had restrictions on it and getting tax breaks under...
This was a discussion relative to the Cernak property, Michael.
Yeah. Understood.
Scroll down.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
This is hard to read. The document, so this is a scan from the letter, and it was hard to read as well. I can try zooming in, but it might just still be
worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I think it's probably worth just reaching out to Jeff Bagg.
Okay. And then if it is right of first refusal, is that something that, is there anything else about that we'd want to do, or?
The city is required to act within a certain amount of time after receiving notice of intent to remove the land from Chapter 61 protections. Mm-hmm. And that sets a whole process in motion about, notifying the owner and getting the property appraised. Or the portion of the property appraised. Is that right, Julie? Anyone else?
Yeah. Is this the property that's adjacent to Lathrop?
To the south.
Land?
Yes.
Yeah, so it may actually be of interest in our open space plan.
Mm-hmm. It depends on which portion of it is being removed as well.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that Jeff should definitely be in the loop on this.
Okay. I think in theory he should have gotten this letter as well, but I'll reach out to him.
Okay. I'm also a little bit concerned about the letter being, I guess the question is, when was it received? When was it delivered to the city or postmarked?
I got it postmarked. I'll have to double check on the envelope. I am only allowed to go in the office once, though other people might have received it, but I got it in my mailbox this Thursday when I was able to go into the office.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when the post office postmarked it, because that would be the, COVID aside, that would be the legal start of the clock.
Yeah, let me just see. It might be on my desk in the other room. Hold on one second.
Okay.
And is it a 60-day window? I forget. I don't think it's as short as 30 days.
No, I don't think it's shorter than 30 days, but I don't know that it's as long as 60.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So now that this letter has come through, they have to hold on the solar development, until...
I have no idea. That's beyond our purview.
Okay.
Because, right, this
Actually,
is
yeah, I can't remember enough of the details of how 61A works.
Should he be requesting that through city council or through another department?
I don't have any recollection.
Yeah, it was this letter was primarily sent to city council, but was also sent to all the other most boards, it seems like.
Oh, it says Conservation Commission.
Right, we were CC'd on it. And then this is all the people they sent it to, but then the main person it was addressed to was the city council.
Huh.
Okay. If the notice of intent to sell or convert does not contain all of the material as described above, then the city or town within 30 days after receipt shall notify the landowners in writing that the notice is insufficient and does not comply. For a period of 120 days following the latest date of deposit in the United States mail, interesting turn of phrase, of any notice which complies with this section. It's up to 120 days. The city or town shall have, in the case of intended sale or first refusal, option to make a bona fide offer to purchase the land. So if the notice is insufficient relative to chapter 61, section 8, and I'm not going to read it all, then it's the city's obligation to identify those insufficiencies within 30 days.
Can you say that again? I didn't get that last sentence.
The city has if the notice is deficient, technically deficient, the city has an obligation to respond to the owner within 30 days, identifying the deficiencies. That's how I read that.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that something that the commission does that have anything to do with us to determine if it's deficient?
I would think it'd have more to do with the city's attorney.
Makes sense.
It starts to get into a tricky, very specific interpretation of statute.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, more of taxation and assessors, chapter 61A, and who has ownership on that?
Well, you're right. It's tax relief, so it would be. It's managed through the assessor's office, but I don't know if that. This is addressed to Owen Zaret, so does it fall to the city council?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
Well, I'll definitely ask Jeff about it, and then specifically ask him about how it might work into the open space plan in relation to Invasive and all that as well.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on.
All right.
Beacon. Easthampton School Committee, 151305, construction of a new school building.
So, Melissa, you had sent me concern that you had seen about sediment getting into the road on Park Street there. And I double checked within their SWIP, and there are, a number of measures that are supposed to be taken to prevent sediment getting into the road, and the washing of vehicles and street sweepers, all that good stuff. And when I reached out to them, they said they've been doing those things. They also were able to provide pictures of the area post sweeping, and it definitely still has, it seemed to me to still be, dirty, but I don't know. I guess my question is, what is the level? Does it need to be perfectly clear, or what? I can show you those. I can bring those pictures up if you guys want to see them, but.
Okay. Yeah, because what was shared with me was a screenshot of a very involved social media conversation about the state of the roads as it pertained to the SWIP.
Right.
Basically.
All right, here comes the pictures. Hold on a second.
It's like being 2 blocks from White Brook. Every time I drive by, they have a sweeper coming out and they're sweeping the road. Every time I go by, they're trying to clear the dirt off. So I've seen it at least 5 times in a couple of weeks.
Is the access road to White Brook, is that paved or unpaved at this point? From the original access road driveway into White Brook, is that paved or unpaved now?
I think it's unpaved with gravel on it, with stone on it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so they do seem to be, I guess, they do seem to be running a street sweeper.
I've seen a street sweeper about 5 times in a couple of weeks.
And what's your take on the condition of the road, Michael?
Yeah, it gets dirty. It depends what the hours are when the sweeper's there. But there are a lot of trucks going in and out recently. So I think they're doing an okay job. It's just a lot of dirt.
And if there's a certain level of commitment, of obligation to install best management practices that knock the loose soil off construction vehicle traffic wheels and manage it on site, as opposed to.
I think the difference is before COVID, before construction stopped, they had a guy out there sweeping and managing traffic. After COVID, and since things just started up, I don't think they've gotten up to speed yet. Whatever that means, I think they're just getting going.
Yeah, I got the email that I got from them. They were saying they were taking all the measures that the SWIP called for, which included, washing, and basically it seemed comprehensive to me.
It was dirty today. I mean, I didn't see a sweeper. It was dirty, but not terribly. I think they can do more, but they were, before COVID shut them down, they were doing what they were supposed to do, I think.
So I guess the question is, do we want to ask them to do more, or?
Or ask them if they're keeping up with what they were doing before COVID. I can double check in the next week before our next meeting. It's up to you guys, what you guys think.
Yeah, because hopefully they should have been doing all the required SWIP measures before, but I didn't ask if they had specifically changed their processes post or post-COVID or not.
I didn't think it was an issue, and you know me. I saw a sweeper a couple of days ago, so it's up to the commission what they think. I think it's okay.
Cassie, are there any other pictures?
Well, the pictures, the screenshot that Melissa sent me as well. And then that's pretty much it in terms of just what Park Street looks like.
Okay.
I think it does get very dirty with the trucks. There used to be a guy out there monitoring it, and he hasn't been there after COVID when they opened up. So maybe we can ask if there's a monitor guy there. It seemed like there was a guy directing getting the dirt off the road.
Okay. Yeah, I can ask that.
All right, are we ready to move on?
Okay, yes.
Okay, last compliance update item. Easthampton 151306, maintenance activities including spreading of gravel millings in potholed areas, River Street.
Okay, and this, I think we've already, resolved this, but I just didn't know if made sure everyone had seen it, that the city engineer did respond to all the questions that everyone had about their request to repeat the action. And he just confirmed they're not going to be bringing in any additional material for grading this spring. Okay. They brought in material for the last year's work, as it had been a number of years since the work had originally been regraded, but they don't need to do that this time. This is just routine maintenance. The highway supervisor said that in the past, we maintenance graded the road in fall and spring. And he said the need for regrade, or the need for gravel, was about every third year. They're requesting for this regrade for the spring and plan to include this with the bundle NOI in the future.
So is everyone comfortable with that? That documentation, that information relative to the question that was posed?
I think so.
Sure.
It would be really nice, Cassie, if I'm sure everyone's struggling to cope with, especially with functions in the city, maintaining a normal work process, but it would be really nice to know when they plan on taking the next step with the notice of intent that was submitted. It's been a while.
Right. Yeah, I asked him that when I spoke with him about this project, and he didn't give me an exact response or date or anything, but I'll ask him again and just be like, I need a date.
I mean, our hearings are pretty regular, so even doing it this way. So if he needs to pick a date, they're out there. And I know it would just be nice to not have this limping along in this way.
Right. Okay. Yeah, definitely. I'll reach out to him again.
Thank you. All right. So with that, general business, meeting minutes, May 11th, 2020. Cassie, I had sent you some recommended revisions.
Yep.
Did you have a chance to send those around? I know I sent them very late.
I sent those around pretty quick after you sent them to me as a response to my original meeting email. So I don't know if you all got a chance to look at it or not. I looked over it. All of the changes make sense to me. I apologize that I did the like verb tense in that way. So that I'll definitely change that. I think I saw one thing that was doing it that way, and I was like, oh, I guess I better. I don't know. So I'll fix that. It'll be easy. And then Deb also sent me a few edits to make that made sense to me. So I'm going to make those as well. And it seems like the majority of those were grammatical.
Oh, here we go. Sorry, I didn't see that.
So that amended version you sent out this afternoon, right?
5:54 p.m. So one of the recommendations in that version is to, we had a standard caveat about where we list public participants, and the caveat is some names may be incomplete or misspelled due to illegible writing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't reflect how we're conducting our meetings at this time, so I think that it would be good to come out.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And just in general, going forward, is it okay with you guys if I do the minutes? It just seems like it makes sense because nobody has the little laptop and you have to use your computers to be in the meeting, whereas I'll have the recording. So that's how I did these ones, is I rewatch the recording and then I create the minutes, which seems easier. I know that maybe once we go back to physical meetings, it'll make more sense for someone else to go back to taking them. I just want to make sure you guys were all comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And appreciate it. Thank you, Cassie.
Oh, no problem. and too, like, you don't have to go back. I'll keep doing them if you want me to once we go back to the physical meeting. It's up to you guys.
Okay, Michael has a feisty pet, I realize now.
Oh. I wasn't even looking.
Yeah, no, I don't think you'll find anyone. I certainly won't object to you taking this on as long as it leaves you with enough time to, in your schedule to address the meatier obligations of the role. Okay.
Awesome.
So, that said, is there a motion to approve the minutes as revised and distributed at 5:54 p.m.?
Motion to approve the May 11th meetings as revised and distributed at the time that Melissa just noted.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Jay Ryan,
Aye.
Jessica Harwood,
Aye.
Deborah August,
Aye.
Michael Whittemore,
Aye.
Julie Busa.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you, Cassie.
No problem.
All right. Possible violation at Lowndes Avenue follow-up.
So this was discussed at the last meeting. Julie had noted that there was some kind of dumping going on within the resource area around that address. So I did reach out to Parks and Rec, and they said, they thanked us for notifying them, and they said they've had many issues through the years in that general area. They talked to the neighbors about it. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to catch them in the act, and without that happening, they said it's tough for them to enforce it. But they did used to have a sign out saying no dumping. They're not sure if it's still there or not, and they were going to go check. And if it's not there, they're going to get another sign.
Okay, well, appreciate you reaching out to Park and Rec. I'm sure they're frustrated by illegal dumping on city property.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item, ratification of emergency cert for Connecticut River outfall pipe adjacent to the Manhan River and the Manhan Rail Trail off East Street. For this item, I will turn the reins over to someone else and recuse myself from discussion for conflict of interest.
Okay. If it's all right, I'll just jump in and tell the story of this one. So this is kind of a while ago now at this point that I issued this emergency certification. It was for a pipe that was discovered to be damaged, and so the flow in the pipe was redirected to another pipe, and I was notified that the conditions were appropriate, and they finally had a plan to repair this pipe, and as well as a head wall of a culvert, a drainage culvert leading to the pipe, because both of those needed to be fixed. and that the conditions were appropriate, and then they finally had the plan together to do it. So they requested emergency certification for two reasons. One was that the DEP was putting pressure on the city to fix this problem as soon as possible, because the redirection to the other pipe was not ideal, and it would be better to have it fixed back to the original pipe. The other reasoning, a justification for emergency certification, was that due to the situation with COVID-19, which had just kind of happened, it was after our meeting in March that I received this, but it was soon after. That was like right around when we weren't allowed to go back in the office anymore, and it was all kind of just starting. They didn't know when we would be able to meet to do it through an NOI, and there was a concern that it may not be until after the summer was over. We had no idea what was going to happen. So when I discussed this with Jeff Bagg, we both kind of determined that emergency certification was appropriate in this instance, even though it was a big project. Or it wasn't a big project in that it only took 3 weeks for them to do, but it did, there's a lot of resource areas involved. In the riverfront area, the floodplain, and there even was a small patch of national heritage endangered species. It was like a vegetation patch. So in the special conditions of the emergency certification, I asked that they submit weekly reports in terms of erosion controls, kind of like what we normally do with erosion controls if there was an NOI. I also conducted a site visit when the emergency cert was requested, obviously. And then I did another site visit to check the erosion controls before work began. And then I also did a series of visits throughout the project and was just in close communication with the project manager kind of throughout the life of it. What ended up happening, they finished all the work, no problem. They put in the new culvert head wall, and they were able to repair where the pipe had been damaged. But what they ended up finding was that the pipe was also filled with roots. So they can't go back to using it anyways. But after consulting with Mark Stinson and kind of going through the, whether even in light of how things have kind of adapted to COVID-19, if emergency certification is still appropriate, I advised DPW, it's back in DPW's hands, and I advised them to go ahead and file for an NOI if they want to go through the process of, I don't know, whatever it's going to take to make it work again, because it's not, we can meet now, we have means to do it. And it doesn't seem like the conditions of the river are they didn't seem to think that it was as important for how they're going to do this pipe clearing, whatever it is. And I haven't heard from them since. That was my last recommendations. I haven't had a request for an emergency cert nor an NOI submission since then. But that's kind of where it's standing now. And so the only thing that's left for the commission right now is to ratify the emergency certification.
Does anyone have any questions? Is there a motion to ratify the emergency cert?
Motion to ratify the emergency cert.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is approved. So we need to do a roll call vote. Jessica Harwood.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Deborah.
Aye.
And Jay Ryan, aye.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Next item, submittal of an opinion letter for natural gas line maintenance on Liberty Street.
Yep, this is regards to, they had asked last meeting if we wanted them to go ahead. They are exempt under the act because it's a maintenance of a utility in a right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
They asked if they wanted us to submit, if we wanted them to submit an RDA, just so that it was in the record, and or the other option was to do an opinion letter, and we had opted for an opinion letter, so they submitted it. I don't know if you want me to share my screen or anything, or if people had a chance to review it, had any questions.
I have no questions. Anyone else?
Nope.
Nope.
Next item. Oops. GZA outstanding balance update.
Yeah, so the last correspondence that we had with them, I don't know if you all remember, this was in regards to work. It was a peer review that we had GZA do for another project. You know, our last understanding was that the peer review is usually paid by the applicant. Is done at the applicant's expense. So we paid the originally agreed sum, but there is like a smaller amount. I think it's sort of like $600 something still outstanding for work that there isn't an explicit record of that being requested or agreed upon as an additional amount that we were going to ask for. So we had said to them that even if there is an additional amount, it again is the applicant's it's at the applicant's expense that we have a peer review done, and that was the information I sent to GZA. I got a response that, and I'll just read it to you now. It says, "We understand that the applicant who was paying for our services did not provide sufficient funds to pay for the additional services requested by the commission from GZA. However, our contract is with the town of Easthampton and not with the applicant, and so the town is the responsible party in this situation." I was just curious. I don't know where to go from here.
Contract.
What's that?
The commission only signed one contract for a lump sum amount.
And we paid it.
And we paid it.
That.
So I'm not sure, you know, contractually, there is no second contract.
That was like the dumbest thing I heard all day.
So should I ask, I don't know if maybe they have a second contract, they should send it. If they have a contract with that information that we signed, but it doesn't sound like that's the case, nor does anyone remember that being the case.
No.
Oh, we didn't say anything.
The agent at the time signed a contract without the commission's review and approval.
I don't think they have that. The agent doesn't necessarily have the power to do that, would they? I wouldn't think so.
No, but GZA would, you know, a consultant wouldn't know that necessarily. So
I'll see if they have anything.
Okay, I will. Awesome. Great. Yeah, I'll send that to them and hopefully we'll get to a solution soon. And then I have one more item that wasn't on the original agenda, and it's regards to Mutter Field, which is a question that Melissa, you had brought to me. If you guys have time, we can talk about that as well.
Sure. I mean, I can only speak for myself, so I don't know what anyone else feels like doing.
Plenty of time. I've been home all 17 years, so bring it on.
I think we can keep it brief tonight, perhaps, Cassie, and maybe do information gathering for the next meeting.
Yeah, totally.
Just put it out there.
Absolutely. So basically, just a quick thing. We originally permitted for a kind of gravel parking area to be installed at Mutter Field for handicap accessibility. And they recently paved it and added paving to that area. So it became what looks to me to be an impermeable surface as opposed to the original gravel. I went through the old files. I was able to find all the old files and I digitized them. They are linked in that project update file. There's a link on the bottom to all those files, and just kind of, I also added the minutes, and I don't see any reference to paving being permitted. So I guess the question is, I don't know if you guys want to take some time to take a look through it and confirm that that's the case. And then if we feel like that it's appropriate, we can go ahead and, I guess, issue an enforcement letter. I don't know what the next steps would be necessarily.
This is the parking area on East Street?
Correct.
I do remember, or I'm pretty sure I remember, that when we went to look at the site after it was constructed, there were issues with erosion and gullying in that lot, which is probably why this came about, but I don't ever recall anyone requesting to pave it.
No.
Okay.
Cassie, in that file, did you find a certificate of compliance as well? Okay.
And an as-built drawing. And I apologize because I don't have the big, one of the plans was just a giant plan, and I don't have a way to scan it. So I scanned it in pieces so it might look insane, but all the information should be there.
Okay.
What,
Jay, do you have a large format scanner by any chance?
Scanner. Printer, yes, not a scanner.
Well, you know,
in the building.
Next on the list.
There's one, it's Dan Murphy has one, and he's let me use it in the past, but all the offices like shut down right now, so he wasn't there, and I don't know how to do it without him, so. And I don't think I could like break into his office.
What resource areas would that be in the parking area?
At a minimum, it's buffer zone to BVW and bank.
Because the stream is just to
The stream
What?
is just to the, oh God, I don't even know what, I'm all compassed out here. Let me, what you can't
it's
see is
further
zooming into
southeast.
Oliver. So I believe it's this one. Let's Brickyard, Mutterfield Accessible Trail. Okay. I'm just trying to pull up a USGS topo map at that location. It's shown as intermittent. So then the question would be whether or not it had a watershed and 99% duration flow rate that pushed it into perennial. I don't remember if there was a riverfront area aspect to it or not.
But it's definitely within the buffer zone regardless.
I believe so, at least part of it.
And that's Tuscomic land, right?
Yep,
That would have been who did the paving, not the city.
correct. So I'm waiting for stream stats to delineate right now.
Do we know when they paved it?
I think it was this spring.
Okay.
It's thinking.
As it does.
I'm not complaining. It's a great program, Julie.
I know, but it has to think sometimes.
I'm just trying to be nice to it.
Oh,
Okay, so it has well under a half square mile drainage area. So it is intermittent, so it just says buffer zone.
Yeah.
So. But the question would be one of stormwater management. So, yeah, if you said you shared that information, the original filing, Cassie?
uh-huh.
Okay. So, to be continued, I guess.
Yeah, so do you want me to, I'll take a deeper dive, but I guess we can get into it next time. Just if you want me to send an enforcement letter, if I find what the next steps would be?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we discuss that in more informed detail next time.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, is there anything else?
It's Mike. One last quick item. Jeff had a planning board meeting over the weekend about Plain to school, Plain Street to the new school, and their design from the Conway schools going through a lot of wetlands. So just a heads up that analysis might be needed in the future.
Is that available online?
It is.
Can you send that to Cassie so she can distribute it to us?
I can.
Oh, thank
So
you.
they have planned designs for the trails. They're not sure if it's going to be asphalt but they have it going right through wetlands in a few spots. So It was informative. I'm for it. I'd like to have a lot of nature trails going through, but I think we're going to be pulled into that. So I'll send that to Cassie.
Thank you. All right. So our next meeting is scheduled for June 22nd, 6 p.m. Zoom, Cassie, I assume?
Yeah, it's going to be Zoom for the foreseeable future. I'll let you all know when I have an idea of when maybe that would stop.
All right. It is 7:58. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. Jay Ryan.
Aye.
Jess Harwood.
Aye.
Deborah August.
Aye.
Michael Whittemore.
Aye.
Julie Busa.
Aye.
There we go. Motion carries. End of meeting, 7:58 p.m. Thank you all very much.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Nice seeing you all.
You too, Michael.